Hello everyone, this is Julia. Thank you so much for joining me on my craft room adventures. Today, I have this really fun slimline card to share with you that I made using Stamps and Dice by Sunny Studio Stamps. I just really adore this little cutie in the hot air balloon. So I started by ink blending a panel that I cut down with the slimline scalloped frame dies. And I'm using my ink blending tools for this one. So I started out with squeezed lemonade. Then I'm going in with spun sugar. But spun sugar was just a little bit too light, so I'm also bringing in some worn lipstick. And I wanted to create some sort of a watercolor effect on the background so that there's a little bit more movement, just not like straight or smooth ink blending. So I'm using the edge of my blending foam to create a little bit of texture. Then I'm going in with shaded lilac. Again, just using the edge to add a little bit of like stripes and texture. And then up next I'm going in with tumbled glass. And I wanted the yellow to purple fade to be sort of like small at the bottom and then fade out into larger areas of blue. So I put down the base layer of tumbled glass all over the top panel. Now I'm bringing in Salty Ocean and just smoothing that out a little bit again with the tumbled glass. Then I'm bringing in Blueprint Sketch at the top. And then I'm also going in at the very, very top edge with some chipped sapphire. Just so that it's clear that it's a sunset sky. It's like kind of getting dark. Just pulling down the darker colors a little bit further. And then I'm also trying to intensify the colors at the bottom. Adding a little bit more texture again. And I'm just pulling the colors back and forth until I'm happy with the texture and the stripes. Or, you know. Then I stamped out all of my images onto Transotype Perfect coloring paper, and I'm using my Copic markers to color them in. I wanted a color that is similar to worn lipstick, so I'm using RV20 markers for this, RV29 as my darkest shade, and I'm blending that out with RV25, and I'm only doing a rather thin line of this because I wanted the majority of the color to be quite a bit paler, or well, less bright. Then I'm going in with RV23. Just blending that out. Then RV21. And I'm just leaving a little bit of a light edge. And I'm using RV10 for that. I went in with a second layer of the same colors in exactly the same spots just to create a little bit more depth. And now I'm using the same combination on the bottom of the hot air balloon. Again, RV29, RV25, RV23, and 21. And a little bit of RV10 in the center. Again, going in with a second layer just to add a little bit more depth. Then RV21 again, and then the center RV10. I'm using end markers for the white areas just to add a little bit of shading. So I'm going in with N1 first. Then I'm blending that out with N0. And then with a colorless blender. But I wanted a little bit more definition, so I'm going in with N3. just a very, very thin line. And that creates a little bit more dimension there, and then I'm just blending that out with N0. And again with a colorless blender. For the basket, I'm using E50 markers, E57 just along the bottom edge and the edge of the rim, then E55 just to blend that out. I realized that that wasn't quite dark enough for what I wanted, so now I'm also bringing in E59. Then again, blending that out with E57, then E55. Just going over those edges again. And then blending that out with E53 and E51. For the bunting border, I'm using B60 markers because I wanted a cool tone purple. And even though those are blue markers, they have kind of a purplish hue. So I went in with B69, then blending that out with B63, and then B60. Then going over that same area again with B66, because I wanted there to be a bit more texture. I didn't want it to blend out smooth completely. Then I'm going in with a little bit of V000, just to add a bit more of a purple tint. And then going back in with B63 and then B60. For my yellows, I'm using Y17, Y11, and Y000 just on those dots. And I also use the same color combination, the pinks, the purples, and the yellows on the little bunting border. Up top you can see that I colored it the opposite way around first with the bunting in yellow, with a like banner in yellow and the dots in purple, but I changed my mind, so I just colored it again in the blue with the yellow dots. Then I'm going in with warm grays for my little koala. I'm using W7, W5, and W3, a little bit of RV21 on the cheeks. I always find it easier to add the blush tone first and then blend it out when I color in the rest. Then W1, and for the center a little bit of W0. Again, adding a little bit more blush there. And blending that out with a W0 again. For my monkey, I'm also using the E50 markers that I already used on the basket. I'm using the E59 in the areas that would be the darkest. And I'm also adding quite a bit up top where his hand is. They usually wouldn't be, I wouldn't add such a dark area there, but I masked off the heart balloons that the monkey is holding, and the image still has the strings there. So I just added quite a bit of shading so that that wouldn't be visible. Then I'm blending the E59 out with E57, then E55. Again, darkening up the areas with the E59 again, just so that there's quite a lot of definition on my cute little monkey. Again, blending that out with E57, then E55. And for the body, I'm using E53 as my lightest shade. In a minute, I will realize that I have forgotten to color the left ear. I will go back and do that. There we go. For some reason, I always skip like one tiny area of an image. I have no idea why. It's like right there. I should see it, but I don't. Moving on. Then I'm going in with E51, but I realized that that was just a bit too light. So I'm going in with E53 as my darkest shade for the face, the tummy, and the hands and feet. I'm adding RV21 again for the blush, then blending the E53 out with E51, and then E50 as my lightest shade. Just adding a little bit of B0 for the clouds, just so that they have a little bit of color at the bottom. Then for my mountains, I'm using the end markers again. For this one, I use the Country Scene stamp set, and usually those mountains have some like trees in front of them. But for my card, I really didn't want to add like a darker green at the bottom. So I just used some post-it tape to mask off the trees when I stamped the image. And I just used a Copic multiliner to extend the lines because I didn't know exactly how wide my mountain range would have to be. So I just drew in some lines, cut them out, and then I used the slimline scallop frame dies, the stitched rectangle part, and I cut them out with this to add the stitching line and the correct width for that. And then I'm going in with N7 as my darkest shade, then N5, N3, N1, and N0. I do only have the original markers for the N0 and the N1. I'm not the biggest fan of the bullet nib. I do want to get the brush nib eventually, but I just haven't been back to the store yet. So off camera, I just added a second layer of those colors, and now I'm stamping my sentiment. And I use the Sky's the Limit, and I'm just heat embossing that in white. Off to the side, my heat gun was already heating up, so I'm just running it over the cardstock until it was smooth and melted. And now I'm just using a baby wipe until I just shake it until it's dry, then quickly run over it with a baby wipe to get the excess anti-static powder tool off, because I always find that it leaves like a dull sheen otherwise. Then I die cut the scallop part of the scallop rectangles, and I just added some worn lipstick distressing just around the edges onto some pink cardstock just to match it up with the ink blended panel. Then I die cut a piece of white cardstock just a little bit larger than the stitched rectangle just to have some matting for my ink blending. Adding tape runner to that as well, and then I'm just lining that up. And it's time to add my images. I just placed down the mountain range. Then I'm adding the like little bunting border to the hot air balloon with some liquid glue. And I'm also adding in the cute koala. It's just so adorable. And I love that you can have like different critters sit in the hot air balloon. It's just so fun. Then I'm adding some clouds to the background with liquid glue as well. I just mapped out the placement a little bit before because most of it will be covered with the hot air balloon and the monkey. Then I'm just figuring out the placement, and I'm gluing the little bunting border to the hot air balloon so that I have the spacing correctly. Then I added foam squares to the back of all the images, and now I'm just adding that down. I also added foam squares to the back of my sentiment strip. I added here to down a little bit crooked, so I just flipped it over so it was easier to see. Then I'm just adding some white gel pen highlights to my images. I really like the look of them when I see other people's cards, but I'm always so nervous because at this stage, if I mess this up, it could mess up the whole card, but I really want to try to use them because I really like the effect. So here it goes. I like how it turned out. I still have to practice more, but yeah, I just stopped there, afraid to mess it up. Then I'm just going in with some Nouveau Aqua Shimmer pen on the clouds, on the banners, and also on the mountaintops. And then I'm also bringing in some Stardust stickles as usual, just on the bottom of my clouds, on the little dots on the bunting, and also on the mountaintops, just for some added sparkle. And that finishes off my card for today. I really like how it turned out. I just had so much fun playing with the ink blending too to create like texture that looks like you used watercolor, but it's just ink blending. So I think that's really fun. And oh my god, this hot air balloon critters are just so cute. And that monkey just dangling off because they're taking the trip. I think it's just so fun. I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so very much for watching and for joining me today. If you enjoyed it, I would appreciate it if you would give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more crafty videos. And I hope I will see you again soon. Until then, have a wonderful day. Bye!